We begin with the contingency plan. During the ravages of a deadly machine apocalypse, the humans of our era prepare Project Zero Dawn. Thanks to their efforts, humanity survives, but largely starts over from scratch. 1,000 years in the future. Horizon's NPCs design their costumes after what natural resources they live around, and what they see in the environments around them. The nomads living in the snowy mountains model their silhouettes after bears and wolves, for instance. While the kingdom living high atop the mesas takes more of an avian influence, modeling their looks after birds. This applies to their fate systems too. Religion, in Horizon, forms around the character's attempts to rationalize the world and environment around them. The Nora living in the Rockies pray towards a massive sacred mountain. The Carja living at high elevations have a clear view of the sun, and pray in the direction of sunrise. The nomadic Banuk pray to fallen machines. Machines are found everywhere they venture, after all. Across all of this, the game's 2024 remaster significantly updates NPC models to look more real and believable. The results are remarkable, but not always consistent. There's a lot to see in the Sacred Lands, the Sundom, the Frozen Wilds, and all the other regions of Horizon's expansive open world. Let's hone in. Dialogue, design, animation, and annotation. NPCs fill the worlds of our favorite video games in a variety of ways. I happen to like people watching in games, and I also like virtual photography, or the use of in-game photo modes and cameras to snap interesting shots. So at the intersection of those two things, I've been photographing NPCs as my subjects of interest for some time now. I talk to them when I can, follow them around, and pay extra attention to their clothing, character design, narrative motifs, and behavior patterns that might go unnoticed by the average player. And here's what I learned. In Horizon Zero Dawn takes place in a far future Earth where machine dinosaurs roam the wilds, tending to the planet around them. The human civilizations have all splintered off into distinct tribes, each with their own unique cultures, customs, and religious beliefs. In 2017, Guerrilla Games took full advantage of this premise to design some truly unique NPCs, all dressed in appropriately thoughtful combinations of fabrics, animal furs, metals, and machine parts. I previously covered Zero Dawn in a segment in my first ever NPC video, but with the recent 2024 remaster and my upcoming video on the sequel Forbidden West, I felt now would be a good time to revisit its world for a standalone video. This does mean I'll repeat a few key points from back then, but I'm mostly starting from scratch here. I'm also primarily looking at the remaster to keep things fresh. One of the major changes Guerrilla and Nyx has made was an increase in NPC density. Towns feel much more alive and populated now, and the level of character detail has also been enhanced since the 2017 original, as you can see here. The patterning on their clothes looks more layered, like they're made of actual textiles, not just textures. The characters themselves look more expressive. But the team didn't stop there. They've added some new interactions and Easter eggs too, many of which help thread more smoothly into the second game. In fact, Nyx has actually carried over some things, like clothing flourishes and details, from Forbidden West. As you can see here, skin tones and hair have been adjusted to look smoother and react more to lighting changes. So things like face paint blend in more with NPC skin now. The musculature is more toned and defined with visible veining, and clothing looks more natural and textured, as opposed to this more jagged look the different parts used to have. To be clear, I don't think there was anything wrong with this look. The way different outfits were scrapped together felt very unique to Horizon, and this messy, scattered layering went hand in hand with that. The remaster just smoothed some of that out. All in all, HCD Remastered is one of the best re-releases on the market. Most improvements are genuinely fantastic, and it's one of the only times my qualms about remastering such a recent game have been quelled by the end result. But I do also want to highlight the NPCs had varied, unique, and colorful designs to begin with. Many of them already looked great in 2017. The increased sensitivity to lighting actually means that some of their more vividly bolded features, like dark circles around eyes or face paint colors, can get muted under the wrong conditions. Here's a quick case study. This is the armorer at the Hunter's Lodge in the 2017 release. You can see various goods and backstocks on the shelves behind her, and there's a buzzing wall lamp by the counter that nicely illuminates her. The cinematography and shading feel deliberate. In the remaster, her model looks better and more vivid overall, but the lighting looks less even, less purposeful. When you talk to her, she looks more expressive, but we lose that nice, calculated bokeh effect we once had in the background. We're basically losing some cinematographic flair in exchange for all the updates. It all feels more real, but isn't necessarily always prettier. The animation quality has gotten a boost too, as the devs recorded hours of new mocap to replace these more stilted NPC interactions from 2017 with this, closer in parody to Forbidden West. This is most apparent in the shot-reverse-shot dialogue scenes, where we can see just how much more expressive these animations have become.
Aloy! Come for a drink? Or if you want to try my arm?
She's flush with her victories. Turned a Carja soldier right over on his back.
Anything to stop him singing.
I was just headed through. Wanted to see how you were doing.
But let's also take the ambient animations during basic gameplay. NPC costumes in the past weren't affected by weather changes, unlike Aloy's. But the remaster updates that, especially for companion NPCs. Here, we can see small tufts of snow catch on to the ridges in their armor. And when it pours, their clothes visibly dampen. NPCs can feel the rain on their skin. Aloy can't feel it for them, only they can let it in. Next, take this arm-wrestling Oseram couple. Firstly, on a pure design level, the man has gone from completely bald to having a bit of hair, more of a shaved head look. So we've got some nice small character redesigns here and there. The way they push and pull throughout the match, and the little character quirks were already charming to begin with. But now the shadows cast on the table and the improved lighting make the whole interaction feel more tangible and convincing. Huzzah! Forbidden West would go on to do even grander things with Oseram arm wrestling, where NPCs will actually spectate or cheer on these games if they're passing by. Back in Zero Dawn, these systemic interpersonal interactions are scarce and mostly relegated to generic chatter. Speaking with the benefit of hindsight at a Nordic Game Talk in 2023, Espen Sohn from the Living World team highlighted some of the challenges they faced here.
And it depicts a marketplace. And of course, you can see the merchant is doing some sort of merchant pose, and then you have a customer that's sort of like looking at stuff. But they all don't really feel interconnected. They don't seem like they're aware of each other. They're just really like automatons, just kind of like doing their little sort of dance, separated from each other.
In the original release, settlements and towns were programmed in first. It was only then that his team got to populate them with NPCs and ambient interactions, after the fact. So, civilians were designed to accommodate the towns, instead of towns being designed to accommodate a variety of civilians or activities.
In Zero Dawn, a settlement was basically finished before we were asked to add people to it. We needed a more holistic approach. This meant both for us to be more aware of what the other departments were doing, but also to insert ourselves early in their pipeline so that we could influence the content where necessary.
To the original's credit, there are some areas where NPCs crowd around others who might be putting on a show. They watch street performances.
At least you don't put on airs.
Musical performances.
Fine goods for a fair price.
Check out these wares.
All the best ones here.
duels? Or anyone making a fool of themselves while drunk.
I love this bit.
The remaster doesn't reinvent the wheel here, but it greases it nicely. Firstly, like we saw, settlements are denser and there's more liveliness in towns in general. Secondly, they've extended many vignettes to be longer. Instead of a merchant carrying crates back and forth between two nearby spots at the market, for instance, now they'll ferry it back and forth across several blocks and streets, taking more turns and passing by more people. There's nothing new here, but the added distance feels more convincingly like actual work. Sohn has talked about how long animation loops are more meaningful for players generally. Even if the NPC is functionally accomplishing nothing, it creates the illusion that there's greater change happening, especially if you spot them at different points across the process.
The iron spit. Bet they didn't make two of you.
Thirdly, the remaster also recycles existing animations, but in additional novel contexts. For instance, farmers used to sow seeds around their farmlands. It wasn't much, but it was honest work.
Well, don't you seem fresh-faced and ready for anything.
Now we can also see them feeding geese and livestock with birdseed, using the same animation cycle, just in a different area. Again, it's an efficient reuse of assets that nonetheless helps the world feel more dynamic, diverse, and lived in. In an article on PlayStation Blog, senior technical game designer Brian Van Noonen writes, "To achieve this, we reviewed all villages, outposts, and cities, identifying areas that felt empty or where we could improve realism and immersion. Building the game for PS5 allowed us to leverage the increased amount of memory available, enabling us to significantly boost the number of non-player characters. We added many more places for NPCs to stand, sit, work, and fulfill their needs. We gave them more varied schedules to increase movement and liveliness in different areas. We also tried to make creative use of existing animations." End quote.
Don't pass up these goods.
Aesthetically, I love exploring these characters' looks. The hair, clothing, weapon, and prop design is very special. Like, look at the details here. The colors, the subtleties, the way the artists have drawn lines between fabrics and furs and face paints and machine parts. Narratively, however, clothing and architectural choices are fittingly recontextualized for Horizon's world, while hairstyles, makeup, and cultural norms are completely decontextualized from their real-life roots. Guerrilla Games clearly put their most care into the internal logic of their world, and that is where Horizon's NPCs shine best. First, the preliminary info about the original release. Per character art director Dan Calvert, the team decided against starting the design process with their main characters. Instead, they started with the generic looks for each tribe, what the average person might look like.
I say generic, you're probably thinking things looking the same, things looking boring like this poor guy. That's not really what generic means. It's merely the opposite of specific. It means versatile.
By identifying that first, they could better make their main characters stand out and look special, instead of designing NPCs to melt into the background and look unremarkable. It also allowed them to be more versatile with the main heroes. The end result is a pool of generic NPCs that don't look all that generic. Every tribe has unique sets of aesthetics that cohere with the world. And how much thought went into tailoring the NPC outfits? Calvert also mentioned how they kept animals above a certain size extinct, so they wouldn't have to compete with the machines.
There's an argument to be made that having living animals competes with the primacy of the artificial life. But on the other hand, we need to feed and clothe the tribes. So we reach a compromise. Animals can stay, but so as to not compete with the robots, any animal over a certain size is now extinct. Accordingly,
the animal furs and pelts NPCs wear are from smaller animals, stitched and sewn together.
So we have to make their garments from stitching smaller hides together.
The artists iterated too. When Guerrilla realized these animal hides by themselves created too much of a primal vibe than what they were aiming for, they had the idea to integrate machine plates into clothes. Hence, we ended up with characters designing armor and accessorizing in novel ways. This is also Zero Dawn's great strength. world building through character design. Everything from the garment construction to the color and shape language of costumes takes the game's world into account. It's an approach I'd love to see more sci-fi fantasy game developers focus on and talk this openly about. Here's character artist Arno Schmitz on the game's podcast.
Well, so the main thing you're thinking about is where are they living? Because they're both kind of hunter-gathering tribes. That kind of describes the Nora perfectly, but the Banuk also do a lot of hunting. So all the ingredients that make up their costume pretty much need to be kind of sourced locally.
He's joined in conversation by writer Annie Kitane, so we really get to hear the narrative perspective in harmony with the design perspective. Let's start with a look at the tribe Aloy is from. Prayers echo across the mountain tops. Hunters creep through the leaves, bowstrings taut. Ready, aim, fire. Machines are felled, and the earth stretches green, fertile, safe. Aloy's home tribe, the Nora, are a matriarchal group of hunter-gatherers living on what we call the Colorado Rockies, what they call their sacred lands. Given her relationship to them, they're arguably the most iconic of Horizon's peoples. Thankfully, this means we have an official cosplay guide that handily goes into the exact materials we can see in their clothes. They might wear nubuck leather boots with machine parts and fur secured around them with blue twine, leather pants, and tunics made of animal hide with fur piping. They might wear colored linens as capelets or scarves. Their hunting bows are decorated with feathers and beads and bear small pictographic markings. And we can see small leather pouches on their belts too. Many of them wear wooden beaded necklaces, showing they handcraft their accessories out of materials in the natural world around them. They have a wide range of face paint styles, each of which signifies a different role or title. Nora Seekers, for example, are rare warriors who venture past the sacred lands to defend it from beyond. There's a lot of personality in how they wear their pauldrons too. Do they go for a clean, functional look? Just heavy pads on their shoulders for protection? Or do they wear a spiky skeletal piece that protrudes outwards, presenting themselves with a roughness, meanness, and edge? In terms of accessories, the feathers are a nice flourish, but also notice the machine wires and leather cords they wear as necklaces. They've got them in different colors. The Nora fashion themselves with a variety of hairstyles. They tie their hair back into various shapes of buns, or accessorize it with cord ties, or wear it as thick fishtail braids. Many of them wear machine parts as earrings. Now that is metal. Pun partly intended? Their looks and lexicon are clearly inspired by Native American cultures, and Gorilla cites influence from Viking aesthetics also. Note the Celtic-inspired pictographs on their gear, or certain face paint patterns. Their recurve bows have these sharp, jagged edges on them, and they don't really modify the machine parts they collect. Note the way their quivers and melee weapons are worn in comically oversized containers on their backs. It feels like they used machine parts to make them, but didn't quite know how to cut or refine those parts down. All in all, the Nora are critical to the series' entire lookbook, and that's despite their notable absence in the Forbidden West next game. We spend a lot of time with the Nora in the early hours especially, while Aloy is growing up as an outcast around their sacred lands. In many ways, they're the simplest of Horizon's NPCs. They have a strict, inflexible religious code and don't really deviate from their lands or their habits. As the game progresses and becomes more narratively and mechanically complex, though, so too do its geopolitics. So too do its NPCs. Consequently, when measured up against the later tribes, the Nora feel a bit narratively underdeveloped. The surface-level Native American influence on their designs is something the series has rightly received criticism for, by experts more qualified than I. See the description for relevant sources. I'm not going to focus on those same points here, but they are important to examine when talking about NPC design and world building. Past the aesthetics, where I find this influence particularly frustrating is in the narrative.
It's her!
The tribe's general arc is that it goes from rejecting Aloy as an outcast to, later in the game, worshipping her as a savior figure, the Anointed.
You're proof of the goddess's love for us, Anointed.
All praise Aloy, anointed of the Nora.
The implications of you, the player, as a young white woman being this messianic icon for the tribe are, well, icky, and Aloy feels it herself.
First you shun me, now this? I will not be worshipped. I'm not your Anointed. I don't belong to you.
The game feels self-aware of this internally. She rejects the label and calls these worshippers out on their hypocrisy. When I look at the bigger picture though, I don't think the story is self-aware externally. The Nora begin with a very fundamentalist faith system. They reject Aloy for being born without a mother, and ultimately welcome her after she returns to save them and she's given a message from All Mother Mountain. You know, like, their god. To have that fundamentalism resolved through quite clear-cut biblical symbolism feels thematically problematic in a way I don't think Guerrilla intended.
You have risen higher than any Nora.
From an ambient dialogue perspective, this turns the Nora almost monolithic at the end of the game. When you speak with them, almost all of their generic voice lines are in praise of Aloy and the player.
It seems so long ago that you were outcast, Anointed. Another lifetime. I am humbled to be in your presence.
You bless us all.
And it feels weird.
You're proof of the goddess's love for us, Anointed. The matriarchs have never declared an Anointed before. You're the first.
On one level, these interactions just aren't very nuanced or interesting. On a deeper one, the politics of these interactions are charged in ways the game just doesn't grapple with. All of this is better handled beyond the Sacred Lands. The other tribes might thank you for various things,
The Nora have no reason to help the Carja, but you did anyway. Thank you.
or comment on story beats you've been involved with.
Many are impressed that you woke the frozen tallneck. I suppose it's an accomplishment.
Or even on things Aloy's friends are up to.
I am faithful. I trust young Itamen's wisdom, but people are losing hope.
But they can talk about so many different things that they never feel defined by their relationship to Aloy. They can even be abrasive.
Yes, you're very faithful.
There's a wider breadth of design choices, voice lines, and personalities here. I don't need my ego inflated. Personally, I like when NPCs have a bit of edge to them. For a nice example, take the hunting grounds in the Frozen Wilds. The Banuk there will congratulate you for earning high scores on your hunts.
Allow yourself a little pride, Outlander. Many Banuk try their whole lives to win at the hunting grounds.
But not all of them will be equally pleased.
The hunting grounds aren't yours to conquer, Outlander, even if you poached a win.
Some will try to cut down your achievement at the hunting grounds. Don't listen, they're just jealous.
This kind of D-census just feels more real, and comes off as far more diverse, engaging, and thoughtful writing for a player overall. The Nora live in small towns and villages around their sacred lands, all named some variation of Mother's Heart, Mother's Cradle, Mother's Watch, and so on. Heart is the capital and the most densely populated of them all. These towns clear up a bit in the latter half of the game, as many of the townspeople relocate to their place of worship, All Mother Mountain. You've picked up on the pattern here. Motherhood is clearly a big motif for Nora. This extends to the NPC looks, as we can see some women actually carrying babies around. Have a look. The babies are treated more like props than like actual characters, which makes sense. Video games don't typically bother with baby NPCs for a myriad of reasons, but I quite like how PlayStation Studios have tackled that in recent generations. Here, in Spider-Man 2, and in Ghost of Tsushima, they show up as props for adult characters. This way, there's no additional animation necessary, and the game can just use baby sounds to pretend they're sentient. This is unique to the Nora as far as I could tell, so it really is a thematically cohesive inclusion. The tribe treats pregnancy and motherhood as sacred states of being, and is a truly matriarchal society in more ways than one. According to the game's art book, they observe birthdays, but by celebrating the moms who gave birth instead of the offspring. The patterns on their belongings, too, are designed to be reminiscent of female anatomy, like the, quote, life-giving womb. Moving on, there are some older Nora kids running around the settlements. They talk about Aloy being anointed too, but it feels more endearing coming from them because they clearly don't know what it entails.
You're her. It was you. You killed the demons and the bad men. What does anointed mean?
There's a childlike sense of wonder here that just feels right, in a way it doesn't when it's coming from the adults.
My aunt says you're sent by All Mother to save us. Why didn't you come sooner?
They're also just a lot more blunt.
You're anointed. Can you bring my sister back to life?
Oof. Don't know how lore-accurate Aloy would answer that one. The Nora's emphasis on matriarchy culminates not with the young, but with the elderly. Nora matriarchs are typically older women who act as spiritual and political leaders for the tribes. One of them is literally named Tirsa, like Mother Teresa. Schmitz talks about their designs in depth. As hunter-gatherers, Nora warriors and foragers venture into the wilds and affix more machine parts, armor plates, etc. to their outfits. Civilians in towns, meanwhile, don't use robot parts as much. They dress simpler. Their designs are just as deliberate, though. According to Schmitz, these townsfolk have more time to dedicate to handcrafting, knitting, and crochet, so we see a lot of that in their outfits and in the outfits of their high mothers and matriarchs. And, to honor the matriarchs, hunters actually gift them special machine pieces that signify leadership and status.
And this is really something the hunters gather themselves. So if you look, for example, at the children or the mothers that stay behind in the village, they have like 0 to none robot parts on their costume usually. And the matriarchs, which are like the highest member in the tribe, they often get gifted nice robot pieces, so they usually have some type of robot piece in the helmet.
Walking around their villages, we can also see machine heads displayed as hunting trophies on a lot of their cabins. Or we can see warriors honing their archery skills. Here, watch!
The goddess hasn't abandoned us. She sent us the anointed.
They might even test the tension in their bowstrings between shots. And arrows away.
My little one's growing up so fast. She'll start learning the bow any day now.
You can catch them sharpening their melee skills too with their spears.
We were on our way back from hunting scrappers when a pack of watchers attacked.
And you know all those leather hides in their clothing? We can actually find them tanning and prepping that leather in town. Nora chefs will chop up vegetables, slide them into a pot, and make stew. They live very communally as a people and will dine together outside their homes. In times of stress, the Nora will huddle closely together for comfort. Physical affection is big for them in a way it isn't for the later, less gentle tribes. Injured Nora, meanwhile, rest up in small designated areas. We can see the injuries and bandaging on them as they recuperate. Others keep watch by the border gates, ever vigilant. One of the standout world-building features in Horizon is the myriad ways we see different tribes practicing religion. We can see the Nora praying in the direction of All-Mother Mountain. This was the original cradle that the early peoples of Project Zero Dawn came from, and the Nora consist primarily of those who decided not to stray too far from it across the generations. So, naturally, over time they came to revere the mountain as a mother figure in and of itself. Many characters even proudly wear All-Mother's symbol on their uniforms. Within their villages, they also build small shrines to motherhood more generally.
Mother's heart. It seems so empty now. Everyone who can has gone to the mountain.
As mentioned earlier, their civilians evacuate en masse in the later half of the game, and find themselves sheltering in All-Mother Mountain. Their communal values shine as bright as ever here. Here, they're suddenly forced into close quarters indoors, but they're uniquely suited to the challenge. They know immediately how to band together, how to share space, and how to support each other. Like in their villages, they rest together in large communal bedspreads of hay. They pray to these small shrines dotted around the space. They hold each other. The developers didn't want Aloy to be too tied down by one cultural identity, not in this sandbox, and so she is an outcast. She grows up as Aloy, despite the Nora. The player gets to feel like an individualist hero who can seamlessly move between worlds and learn about each tribe as an outsider, react to each tribe on neutral terms. For Aloy, though, this is a part of her heritage she won't ever truly shake. The phrase, despite the Nora, still establishes a relationship to the Nora. She was raised by Rost. She respects the changes many of her peers are trying to bring to the lands. Her default costume is always Nora. It's an interesting and complicated relationship, marred by a few rough edges in the endgame, that nonetheless does a good job of setting you up for the rest of the game's world. Bitter winds howl while the sky above is painted in waves of aurora borealis. There's light out, but good cover. A good night for a hunt. The Banuk believe in survival of the fittest, and fittingly, there's some of the fittest to be out here. Like the neighboring Nora, they are hunters, but unlike them, they don't see machine parts in purely practical terms. They believe the blue light of the machine signals there's something spiritual about their prey, so they're a lot more extravagant about how they wear harvested parts. There's a kind of showmanship to their design philosophy here. Fine parts, bold colors, heavy padding to protect from the cold while still looking stylish. Since their homes are patrolled by wolf-like and bear-like machines, such as Scorchers and Fireclaws, they take inspiration and shape their costumes after what would have been wolves or bears in our world. Their boots might resemble heavy claws. They might wear long fur coats with machine heads and spines stitched over. Or they'll wear heavy hoods and hats with machine ears attached. Maybe even raccoon tails. These garments all give the Banuk a slightly animal silhouette, again acting as a reminder that they connect to and honor their hunt. Writes lead franchise artist Ilya Golitsyn, Huge headpieces created out of machine parts, shrouds of entangled cables and ribbons, incisions of robot cords that cover their hands, all to present them as beings between the human world and the machine world, capable of communicating with machines.
For the Nora, they tend to wear their robot pieces in a very practical sense. They just take what they have and they use the holes that are existing in the robot pieces. They don't modify them and they just kind of wrap things around. While the Banuk, they kind of, they choose their robot pieces. They usually tend to make these kind of animal skull-shaped helmets. It's very theatrical. And they also have the blue ropes hanging everywhere, all to kind of have a sense of showmanship almost,
They also just have the most colorful costumes in the game. Concept artist Luke Dehan writes, "Being the most colorful guy in the office, I made sure the Banuk also became the most colorful tribe in the game. It's a nice contrast to the more subdued color scheme of the Nora or the Oseram." End quote. This diegetically makes sense too. These wilds are situated around our modern-day Yellowstone, where the Banuk harvest various dyes from the geothermal pools around them.
Wet. But I tan this leather well. It'll keep.
I love that the edges of the screen warp a bit when you dip the camera in the pools too. There are a lot of nice animation flourishes in the process. Sit back and watch.
Not bad. This would make a fine pair of trousers.
Mechanically, this is quite useful too, as it helps the NPCs stand out in the bone-white winds and blizzards of the frozen wilds. The Banuk are a nomadic people who hunt in small units called weraks.
I am the best hunter of my world, and none shall wrest that honor from me.
While they might look like a low-tech tribe at first glance, the Banuk's fascination with the machines actually means they have remarkably high technology literacy.
When the old ones were fresh in their graves and our numbers were still small, this tribe would never fall behind.
Oseram delvers around the area even talk about how impressed they are by Banuk tech. Take their fishing camps. The Banuk use ice augers to carve holes in the ice. Then,
Even after you catch them, you still have to scale them, gut them, cook them, store them.
what's also nice is that NPCs at these camps have unique dialogue about fishing.
Come on, fish, take the bait.
It's small, but it's the kind of detail that just works as an additional hook into the
Too
world.
noisy out here. It's scaring away all the fish. The catch is small today, and so my dinner will be too.
Those fish then get distributed around their villages and cooked on the fire proper. As nomads, Banuk often make their homes in camps, shaping their tents like miniature renditions of the mountains around them.
What? I'm just a kid.
Like the Nora, they'll train with their spears, or with these smaller hunting knives. As we move away from the more isolationist tribes, you can also overhear dialogue about the various relationships tribes in direct contact have with each other.
No one hunts like the Banuk, but I've heard the Nora can handle their bows.
The Banuk have choice opinions about the Oseram and Carja, for instance.
Oseram encampments creep closer to Banuk lands. They should exercise some caution.
Some hunt machines, I catch fish. Could be worse. I could be a Carja.
With Oseram culture favoring manhood and masculinity, and the Carja living as a kingdom, the Banuk also have more progressive views on gender. As a side note, it's quite fun to hear Banuk and Nora discussing how sociologically backwards the more technologically advanced tribes are.
The Oseram, with their ridiculous ideas about women, How many great warriors have they ignored?
Part of this might be down to their historical leader, Banukai, having been a woman. Apparently, she saved the tribe from enemy invaders by drawing on the strength of the machines.
They believe in songs, and they sing these songs, and that's one of the most important ones to them, is the story of Banukai and how she went up north and found the light, the blue light of the machines.
They place a lot of value on songs and stories passed down through oral tradition.
The songs are more than just stories. To sing is to perform a ritual.
Some songs are rituals, others stories. But my favorites are simply jokes.
And so we can find a shaman proselytizing Banukai's story in one of the towns, complete with fun pyrotechnics.
She sewed her body shut with their cables, patched herself with their metal, and kept the light within. When she arrived, the forces of the ravenous tribe had surrounded the camp. Although the light had left her with 1,000 wounds, Banukai charged. And because she held the light, the machines followed.
And yes, that was the voice of Liam O'Brien, who you might know from Critical Role, Naruto, or 100 other things. Banukai's story helps to explain why the Banuk shamans thread machine tubes through their skin. This way, they can carry the blue light in their own bodies. In genre terms,
we must never forget Horea's sacrifice to lay the daemon low.
These games have always been as much fantasy as they have sci-fi. Much of their world and mechanics may be rationalized through sci-fi, but it is a fantastical science.
When the only sound is the wind whipping up the snow, that's when I feel closest to the blue light.
This is very apparent in the NPC designs, and in the ways they mythologize the world around them. And as a particularly spiritual and dramatic people, the Banuk exemplify this best. Hammers, anvils, and the smoke of industry. On the topic of fantasy tropes, Guerrilla themselves describe the Oseram as their world's version of dwarves.
They're basically dwarves, or Germans maybe.
And this influence is apparent in how they dress, how they style their beards and mustaches, and how they work mostly as metalworkers and machinists. The Oseram are quite technologically advanced and like to forge their own metals, so we see a lot of that in their costumes. Steel and iron are favored over robot parts. They wear metallic buckles and fasteners over sturdy leathers.
And those leathers, they're not that well maintained. There's like soot and everything on it.
Yep.
And also just the fabrics they're wearing, their linen, they're very... compared to the Carja, they're very simple materials and they're a lot more sturdy as well. You know, everything is kind of made to be super practical.
These buckles look a little worn, muddied, and rusted, which is apt given their work. And they dress in earthy colors. Women mostly keep their hair short. Of course, smithing's a hazardous line of work. We see quite a few Oseram with eye patches. Though, notably, Guerrilla does away with this particular trend for the second game's Oseram, where they have more protective gear. Merchants wear bright flags on their backs, so you can always tell where they are. We don't get to visit their homeland, the Claim, in Zero Dawn, but as delvers, explorers, and trade businessmen, the Oseram are ubiquitous around the game's world. Of particular note are the women here. Per Annie Catane, many of them left the Claim because men traditionally enjoy more rights in Oseram culture, so these women tinkers are trying to forge a new, more independent path for themselves outside of their homeland.
It's also interesting with the Oseram because their core conflict for their tribe is their struggle with gender and how they treat women mostly. And so actually a lot of women, Oseram, leave the Claim for that reason. You know, they don't have the same rights as the men there.
I believe this is reflected in their designs. The Oseram women in this game wear practical attire and armor, and keep their hair short, as mentioned earlier. Have a look. This does mean we're seeing a selective population of them though, those who rebelled against Oseram patriarchy and are trying to break away. I'm curious to see if the Oseram women of the claim, who subscribe to tradition, will look different, if we ever make our way there in a future game.
Let me tell you, a woman like you wouldn't care for the claim.
For now, out here in Zero Dawn's Sundom, the Oseram live side by side with the Carja in places like Meridian. We'll talk more about Meridian in the Carja chapter. Independently, the Oseram also have quarries and smithing outposts they call home. As mentioned earlier, the Living World team populated Zero Dawn's towns late into production, but the nice thing here is that even if they can't show us much of Oseram NPCs actually working and interacting with the forges, they can show us that they automate. They have water wheels and automatic hammers, where there's a subtle screen shake on every strike. It's small, but it massively heightens the impact. And boom, ingots. It's a really cool way of using level and environment design to speak for character. All Guerrilla had to do was leave a few NPCs to stand around the machinery, and it looks like they're operating and doing work, even without bespoke animations for it. It was a clever way of getting around a pipeline issue that especially suits the Oseram. Per the game's artbook, the team also had an Oseramification style guide for props in their settlements. You know, little aesthetic flourishes that would make their things look distinctly theirs. Pretty cool.
One of the key discoveries for their tribe was discovering the ability to use charcoal burning for fuel, because that eventually led to them creating forges and what we know them for today.
We can also see them dismantling machines for parts. The cool thing about them is they use the whole machine and don't like being wasteful, unlike the other tribes who are more selective about which parts they prioritize. Here, watch.
Another match, double or nothing.
We're letting the Oseram take them all?
Thank you. Only the finest goods here. See for yourself.
Last but not least, there is also a troop of Oseram soldiers called the Vanguard, who are dressed in special heavy-duty metallic armor, sometimes with these cool flaps on masks. Guerrilla purposefully had the tribe construct more out of knots and ropes than buckles and chainmail, to avoid making their costumes look too much like medieval armor. We've talked shop. Now, let's talk slop.
Kept the wheel turning all day, and by the forge, I believe I've earned a drink or two.
Oseram are a notoriously boisterous people who spend their downtime drinking and dining after work. They might chug these giant jugs of mead.
I hear the Nora are pretty good at making use of machine parts. Not, Oseram good, but...
Do these silly little hand waves? Talk about games and contests?
How's that wrestling arm of yours?
And chat over drinks.
The claim still got a pull, but I'm starting to like this place.
Is it just me, or do Carja people walk slow? And they have places to be?
And yes, one of the additional voices for them is Doug Cockle, voice of Geralt in the Witcher games. And you can tell.
Winds howling. Frost in the air. Days like this, I miss working in the smelting halls.
Hey Geralt, like my hair?
Don't just cast about talking to strangers, woman.
In fact, Zero Dawn features a surprising number of prominent VAs covering additional voices. We can also hear Yuri Lowenthal from Insomniac Spider-Man, or from Naruto and Ben 10, as a Carja.
I bet those traitorous Oseram will just conveniently lose Derval and transport to Main Street. We've lived under the same sun all this time. Imagine that.
We now transition to Meridian, the game's most populated and cosmopolitan city. The Oseram are responsible for how high-tech its architecture is. They devised the elevators that run up and down city outskirts. They work a lot of the smithing businesses here. As crucial as they are to Meridian's infrastructure and economy, however, the Oseram still butt heads with the Carja. Constantly. They have totally different value systems, after all. A blazing sun peeks over the mountains, lights the desert sands fiery gold. A Sun King stands atop the capital city, desperate to unite the tribes. If the Oseram are the series' fantasy stand-in for dwarves, the Carja pull duty for elves. They are the wealthiest and most opulent of tribes, and this is immediately apparent in the fine silks and colors seen in their costumes. They might also wear eyeglasses, showing that 1. They know how to work with glass, and 2. Might be more well-read? I don't know. They're certainly the most scholarly civilization, but not all Carja are equal. There are some really interesting divides within the tribe too.
But the Carja, they have a very big sense of hierarchy. You have like the king and the priest. There's even a much stronger sense of religion in that tribe, and all this reflects in their costume. They want to see kind of at a glance who's important and who's not.
We can see this very clearly in the NPC design. Wealthier Carja with more highly respected jobs, like hunters, warriors, and artists, dress in finer and more ostentatious garb than merchants and artisans, who in turn dress finer than farmers and fishermen. Hunters carry notebooks and scrolls and pouches on their belts, and might wear headpieces of machine metal, while farmers dress almost entirely in fabrics, with little to no accessories or machine gear to speak of. There is also the middle class of artisans who accessorize with these fancy pouches with gold ornamentation, flowing dresses with runic art on them, or leather gloves and colorful, but washed out, dyes. They and the farmers below are still fashionable, mind you, just perhaps not as fashionable as their wealthier counterparts. This divide is even visible among the kids. The children who play in Meridian's fields and farmlands dress in rags and bandanas and austere tunics. The ones up near the palace, meanwhile, wear fine silks and machine headpieces. It's a truly granular level of attention to detail on Gorilla's part that speaks volumes about Carja values and how early in life they get ingrained.
I tell you, never have children if you can avoid it.
The needle pushes farther when you consider the Shadow Carja, a splinter faction living in the desert settlement of Sunfall. Here, NPCs, kids and adults alike, dress in cheap, off-white rags and look malnourished.
I saw this child yesterday in camp. I could have counted each of her ribs through her skin.
They resent the Sun King and daydream about taking back Meridian one day.
Come to have a gawk, have you?
There's a bitterness and vengefulness that permeates throughout the city, and understandably so.
I have nothing more to give, you or anyone.
Yet, despite their differences with Meridian, the Shadow Carja end up recreating the same kind of hierarchization within themselves. Average civilians dress in disheveled rags and live in encampments near ground level.
See, what you do is, you pretend the rations are real food. Strawberries, honey, roasted boar.
They train as foot soldiers without armor. Elite soldiers, meanwhile, live within fortress walls and dress in finely plated suits that resemble what we see in Meridian. See, despite all the class and faction differences, there is still a unifying shape language across the Carja, showing common roots.
So we have like a triangle of the hierarchy pretty much, with the king at the top and the peasants at the bottom. And we lined every concept up in that hierarchy, and you could very clearly see also the access to nice materials every like class has. So the peasants, for example, they don't have very nice linens, and also they don't have any nice dyes really. So they still respect all the shape language of the Carja because they live up on these high mesas. They kind of get inspired by their environment and mainly the robot birds.
We can even see some of them gazing out at the vistas, watching the robot birds.
Oh, wonderful!
Schmitz mentions a particular stormbird feather with a, quote, elongated hexagon shape that is popular among the Carja. Rich and poor alike use these feathers in outfits across different contexts. But the treatment and styling of the part differs based on their wealth bracket and class. So, yeah, the Carja of Sunfall follow the same avian influences that the regular Carja do, using the same machine parts, just painted and styled in darker colorways. Sunfall's claim to fame is a massive coliseum where warriors are pitted against machines, and while our travels take us into the arena on ground level, we can make our way up to the stands in free roam to see the spectators. They're clearly not meant to be seen up close, but I always like getting to peek behind the curtain for filler NPCs. So long as they are vaguely human-shaped and making the right movements, they look great from where we're intended to see them. The coolest thing about Sunfall's arena, though, is that warriors from all over the land gather to compete there. This includes tribes like the Oseram and Banuk, of course, but in the remaster, we can also see quite a few Utaru and Tenakth from the Forbidden West. Here, we can see some Utaru with the hay capes they wear on their backs. And intricate machine headpieces. And here's a Tenakth warrior with the heavy tattooing on his body they use to mark their stories. Now, both these tribes were foreshadowed with these prototype designs as far back as the 2017 release, but the remaster adds more of those models now that their place in the franchise is solidified. It makes for some nice connective tissue to the second game, even if their designs are a bit different from what we'll ultimately see there. Overall, the arena is the one way in which Sunfall gets to be almost as much a melting pot as Meridian is. As harsh as their desert is, the people here aren't without hope, aren't without hobbies.
When the weather's this good, I like to think it's the sun letting us know everything will turn out right.
They still hold true to their roots.
The sunlight always reminds me of who I am. No matter what happens, we are Carja, and we will endure.
It's also interesting to juxtapose the ambient dialogue here versus in Meridian. There are some direct contrasts between the two that distinctly put the two cities in conversation.
They say the shadow's rising, and the big fight will come soon.
Tomorrow, they said. It's been hundreds of tomorrows, and we're no closer to Meridian.
What do you suppose is happening in Meridian right now?
Feasting, I wager.
Every time I have a quiet moment, I wind up thinking about my cousins in Sunfall.
If you want my valuables, you'll find them in Meridian.
Meridian, the Carja capital, is Zero Dawn's largest settlement, and where numerous tribes converge for trade, commerce, and even pilgrimage.
Meridian is the center of the world. Everyone comes here eventually.
The city of royalty, the city of light, the city of the sun. Meridian has no equal.
We're the closest to the sun in Meridian. Why live anywhere else?
Its NPCs are understandably happier and more lighthearted, and there's a lot of levity in the kinds of things they talk about. As a result, it feels the most thriving and convincing as an actual place people live in and work in. And have property disputes about?
Some Oseram is building a mansion that will block my view.
And worry about finding the right marriage partners in.
I swore I'd ask her to marry me on a sunny day. We'll father says yes.
There's just a lot of hope and energy and culture that radiates throughout the city.
You can do so much in Meridian. Eat, drink, dance, laugh. Remember.
As massive and industrial as the city is, though, it's also flanked by beautiful nature. By the outskirts, civilians will walk around and gaze out at the nearby waterfalls, or admire the night sky. Hunters and soldiers patrol the nearby forests. We can see that avian influence again in their uniforms. If the Banuk had boots like bear claws, Carja soldiers have ones like bird talons, curving overfoot. They wear bright peacock-esque colors and adorn their helmets with crimson plumage. Note the lettering and inscriptions on their halberds' blades too. Hunters carry scrolls, journals, and writing utensils for note-taking, and more ranged weaponry instead of melee. You know, to keep stealthy. Within city limits, Meridian acts as a center point for Horizon's world. Again, we can see characters from almost all the tribes walking around here, and feel their influence even. As mentioned earlier, Oseram engineers are responsible for the elaborate elevator system that helps people get from the royal maze lands below up to the city high above. Farmers, merchants, and working-class laborers walk around ground level. Meanwhile, up on the city's higher levels, we see a totally different lifestyle enjoyed by the Carja nobles. There's a lot more emphasis on arts and culture. Scholarship and leisure. We can even see NPCs dancing and clapping along during performances.
Wish I could steal a moment like this every day, but there's never any time.
Because Meridian is so dense though, it does make one of the game's more jarring writing decisions especially apparent.
So many come
Only
to
the
the summit
finest
and
goods
can't be
here.
bothered
See
to
for
work.
yourself.
But you don't seem like the rest.
So many come to the Sundom and can't be bothered to work. But you don't seem like the rest.
Yeah, Guerrilla gave different voice actors the exact same lines. So while there may be differences in delivery, you'll end up hearing different NPCs repeat each other verbatim. It's a bit weird and awkward, to say the least, and isn't the kind of problem I've encountered in a lot of other games. Thankfully, the devs clearly realized this, and the issue is completely absent in the sequel. In other regards, though, Meridian mostly works great here, and is particularly varied in terms of NPC interactions and animations.
Arrested 2 for disorderly conduct last night. You don't want to know what they were doing.
NPCs fish by the pier, intermittently casting their lines. Then, on the shore, fishmongers cook, cure, cut, and stow away the fish.
Fine goods for a fair price.
Farmers toil away in the fields.
Farming's about patience. Can't hurry the crops or grow a turkey in 2 days.
And the markets where they sell their goods buzz with life. Food cooks on the fires. Merchants advertise their wares while the people browse. NPCs feed animals around the area, and the Oseram vanguard hang out and put their feet up. Both in Meridian and the Carja settlements beyond, different market stalls have their own little rituals too. There's the fishmonger with their fish, of course. Meanwhile, at produce stalls, merchants might playfully juggle a fruit or two when they're bored. I love this one.
Give you a good price.
Recall how Carja like to implement stormbird feathers into their outfits? We can actually see tinkers scavenging and selling those parts out of giant stormbird wings. As for the music track you're hearing right now, that's Your Hand of Sun and Jewels. The same diegetic song we've been seeing those Carja bands play around the city. Because instruments from our world would not have survived into Horizon's time, all the instruments used to play it were actually custom designed by Guerrilla's sound team. They made, then played, their own instruments. In fact, the mocap for this vignette is directly performed by composers Niels van der Leest, Alexis Smith, and Joe Henson, because, borrowing their own words, they are the top performers of these instruments. They've dubbed the instruments as the Kuna bass, the iron pendulum, and the brown drum. Once again, the art and sound team's commitment to the bit here shows remarkable care for the intricacies of Horizon's world, and that helps the NPCs shine. And here are some other scenes of care around the markets.
Don't forget to stock up before you're on the road. Machines or bandits try to get past me, they'll have a fight.
NPCs get drenched when it rains, but if they happen to be indoors or under shelter, they'll keep dry. And in true Carja fashion, civilians are very attuned to the movements of the sun. In fact, they regularly comment on the time of day. Is it time for work?
Have to go back to work soon. Wish I could just go home and sleep.
For sleep.
Didn't sleep too well last night. So it's good to just take a breather.
For prayer?
I'm no sun priest. I always say a prayer this time of day.
This brings us to the most dynamic of the game's NPC rituals. The Carja pray in the direction of the sun, evoking the names of their past kings. But what's uniquely fascinating is that the intonation of the prayer will change with time of day. Here, watch. And when the sun sets, the priests start departing the temple. At night, they go to the city's memorial grounds, where they pray for the fallen by candlelight instead.
You've seen the memorials in the sunlight? Each tribe has their own, so I've never seen Nora visit theirs.
Let Aloy be the first, then. It's a really cool sight, as each memorial is dedicated to a different tribe and adorned with the kinds of flowers, art, handicrafts, and mementos that are signature to that tribe. The Nora one doesn't really get visitors since they don't travel beyond their sacred lands.
Last hunt was a good one. Struck swift as snow, and none will be going home.
The Banuk one has the occasional travelers and tourists stopping by. And the Oseram one, which is decorated with pottery, treasure trunks, and cool metalworks, might see less action during the day when their smiths are mostly at work, but will get a lot of visitors at night. It's one of the only times you'll see Oseram uttering prayers. The Carja Memorial, understandably, gets regular visitors throughout the day. It's an incredibly moving place, especially as the Sun King had it constructed to honor those who died during the Red Raids, a historic event the Carja were a guilty party in.
I hate that statue of Jiran. It's not enough to vandalize it. We should take it down.
The scars of war just don't go away overnight, right? So there are plenty of people, especially the Oseram, during the Red Raids, the Carja committed atrocities for years, so they're dealing with that.
That tension from the raids still lingers throughout the city, but this memorial acts as a nice symbol that things are moving forward.
A woman now leads the Hunter's Lodge. What's next? A woman as king? So, she played by the rules and won.
The final point of interest is the Hunter's Lodge, where Meridian's best hunters gather to talk shop and enjoy drinks, dinner, or a show. enjoy some scenes around the bar. Meanwhile, more serious hunters use the space to work out and train. Once again, it's a cool hub for warriors from all the different tribes to gather. And the remaster adds yet another fun nod to Forbidden West here. You can see a machine strike board at one of the tables. For those unfamiliar, Strike is the board game minigame that's taken the world by storm in the second game.
Who wants to play Strike? No? Anyone?
It's a cool addition here. And on the note of connections to Forbidden West, there's also this little joke from an Oseram NPC if you ignore him.
Can I interest you in a reasonable share of a lucrative opportunity? Might as well try to sell maize to the Utaru.
Yeah, sorry buddy. There are a few things I'll point out that transcend tribes too. Much like Meridian, there are a couple of other outposts and hunting camps around the world where NPCs from different heritages gather. And we can see some cool inter-tribe interactions. One such encampment is Hunter's Gathering. Here you can see Nora, Banuk, Oseram, and Carja hunters alike all hanging out together. Years later, this place would go on to be the hub and namesake for Guerrilla's multiplayer title, Horizon Hunters Gathering. Players from all the tribes hang out and socialize here, just as the NPCs did in Zero Dawn. Although it's clearly developed here in the years between, even back in 2017 there was quite a bit of liveliness and wealth of activities in the place. People sit around and share their stories.
I'd like to get married, but to be honest, it feels like no one will have me. There.
Oof. You alright there, buddy? Take this Carja warrior showing off and strutting his stuff, for instance. If you wait around, you might see a Nora hunter come in to challenge him to a duel. In Zero Dawn, a lot of NPC animations, duels, cooking, and so on, are recycled across all tribes, so there is no meaningful difference between how a Nora chef cooks versus how an Oseram chef cooks, even though they have supposedly different cuisines. There's no difference between how a Carja soldier and a Nora hunter fight either. Again, this is one of those things Guerrilla's Living World team would go on to distinguish more in the sequel. So far, we've paid a lot of attention to NPC outfits. Turns out, they're paying attention to ours. One of the cool things about Zero Dawn that Forbidden West didn't retain is that NPCs comment on the clothes Aloy is wearing, with different reactions based on the tribe's attire she's dressed in. Generally, they're happy to see you in their own tribe's colors.
You fit right into the Sundan wearing that.
And they scoff at the kinds of clothes other tribes wear.
That Oseram uniform doesn't look very comfortable.
This happens both passively when you pass them by.
She's dressed like a Banuk savage, the kind that whispers to machines. She one of those Banuk mystics? Looks a little young. Oseram armor's not practical on folks from other tribes. Just not sturdy enough for it.
Look at her, dressed all fancy like a Carja. All that silk and flash and nothing to wipe your hands on.
And actively when you talk to them.
I think my sister has that exact same outfit, but you look nicer.
Huh? Oh, it's you. Thought you were one of those damn Oseram. Because you're dressed like one.
Everyone's dressing in Oseram clothes these days. Such a pity.
It's a feature I greatly enjoyed, and one that made the NPCs and their respective civilizations feel a lot more dynamic.
Is that genuine Nora tailoring? Not bad.
A little more dirt on you and even you'd pass for an Oseram.
Thanks, Geralt. That means a lot. There's also a lot of ambient dialogue that changes as you progress throughout the game, with NPCs commenting on world events and geopolitics.
Only lines longer than at Ursa's funeral will be for Dervahl's execution.
Come to gloat, Nora. Well, as you can see, I'm busy.
In more casual moments, NPCs also chat about some of Aloy's friends.
I'd like an opportunity to share a drink with Aaron. There's a man who knows how to enjoy life.
These last few features aren't unique to the Horizon games, and are things I've encountered in many of its fellow contemporaries, but they're still cool enough details that I like to highlight them when I note them anyway. They do constitute a lot of meaningful narrative design work that often goes unnoticed and unappreciated. At the end of the day, these are barks. NPC dialogue isn't supposed to stand out, but to just fill out the world and feel believable. So to have it still be relevant and reactive goes a long way. All in all, Horizon Zero Dawn lays a very strong foundation for its world and characters, and does a lot to meaningfully distinguish its various populations, cultures, rituals, and aesthetics. And the 2024 remaster makes a lot of smart tweaks to improve that distinction further, and to seed in things to come later in the series. Way back in 2017, the Living World team did end the project, noting areas for improvement though. Those improvements would emerge in full force with the game's 2022 sequel, which would go on to have one of the most deliberate, vibrant, and narratively cohesive NPC ecosystems I've seen in a game. To fully appreciate that evolution, we must venture beyond Meridian and the Sundom, to the wasteland frontiers of the Forbidden West. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is part of a series in which I look at NPCs in even more games that pique my interest. I also make video essays about games, movies, and all that good stuff. So if you like my work, consider subscribing. This video is made possible by your support here and on the crowdfunding website Patreon. If you'd like to see more of this kind of work in the world, or your name in the credits of future NPC videos, consider checking out my new page there. Also, as of this upload, patrons have access to the first 10 minutes of the Forbidden West video. That one is a big undertaking and may take a while, so if you'd like previews or want a way to watch my bigger projects in smaller chunks, consider taking a look. I am also posting my virtual photos there. Those are totally free for all followers for your viewing pleasure. So enjoy. Finally, alternative. There's also a Ko-Fi link as a one-time tip jar, equally as appreciated. Thank you as always for sticking around, and until next time, remember that every stranger on the street's got a story, and every story can only get stranger.